Morning.
Good morning. How are you, Carson?
Oh, good. How are you?
I'm good. Did you see my email to Mayor Peck?
I did. Yeah, I mean, I know Greg Mills will be on here, Mayor Mills, so I'm hoping he can step in if need be.
Yeah, I also reached out to him by text message. Yeah, that was my scheduling error.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
no error. It's okay. It happens. I think, so you're aware, here's our kind of final agenda. I accidentally left off our treasurer's report on one of the agendas that went out.
Okay.
So when we get to that, just if you don't mind just saying, we're going to go over this now, and then I have that for Mayor Mills to go over. And
Awesome.
that's really the only change.
Okay. Sounds good. We are in our final county manager interviews today, so I'm super excited.
Are you happy with the candidates?
Yes, we are. We're not gonna lie, we were concerned going in just because of the talent pool, and it's a employee market, and so we didn't know what we would end up with, but we have two candidates with really strong leadership, really good experience. So
Good.
very happy.
Obviously a big, important role. So always good finding good leadership there.
Yeah. We've
Well, I
been
hope
down.
it goes well.
I think it will. We put it together a pretty good process. We have an employee panel. They took tours of buildings, some of our bigger buildings,
Nice.
just to give them an idea of the county and our culture. And
Yeah. Cool.
And
well, I'm excited to meet whoever it is.
Yeah. And I have to give them both a lot of credit that they did a lot of homework on Adams County before coming. So that makes me really excited.
Yeah, that's so important, right? I mean, Adams County is so unique. Every community is unique, but I think if you walk in without the background, that's pretty discouraging. So nice to hear they're doing that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to let a couple of folks in here.
Sure. So then I totally bamboozled myself. My surface was out of order yesterday. And I was like, you can just get me a replacement by tomorrow, by close of business today. And I'm like, you have a NATA meeting. So I'm coming to you from my cell phone. So you're about a 1 by 1 inch square.
Oh, well, I'm happy to help watch for raised hands and
Yes,
stuff.
if you could please do that, be my eyes as well. It's like, oh, what did I do to myself?
We're so
Dang.
reliant on these things.
Right?
Well, I don't think I could do this without two screens with the windows that I keep open. Even that, it's amazing.
Yep, I totally agree with you. I'm the same. I usually have two screens on my desk and then I have my Surface open.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I think this is another point. We might have a slightly lower participation today just because I think some people are taking off early for Memorial Day. It was still pretty good on RSVPs, but I noticed it was a smidge lower than normal. So just a heads up.
I'm so sorry, Carson. How do we handle the introductions?
We typically don't do formal
Just have them put it in the
introductions.
chat.
That's right. We typically do in the chat.
Awesome.
Such a big group, and hopefully most of us know each other by now.
So we had, who's in the room with us?
Oh, we got around 15, 16 people right now. I'm sure
Okay.
as soon as it turns 7:30, I'll get quite a few more popping on
Yeah,
here.
yeah. We had a interesting, enlightening meeting with Denver International Airport yesterday.
That sounds
So,
interesting.
yeah. It was nice to finally meet Phil Washington in this role and talk with him. So haven't had the chance to do that with COVID, and he hasn't been on that long, but been busy.
Yeah. Well, Chair, we're getting people joining on here. We're over that 20 mark. So if you want to go ahead and get started, I think we're probably good.
Will do. Good morning, everyone. So I'm coming to you from my cell phone this morning. So I'd like to call to order the NATA meeting. What is for May 26, 2022. It's been a fun morning already. So with that, the introduction, since we are virtual, if you can just please put in the chat your name and the agency that you're with, and then we will certainly include that in the minutes for the next meeting. So again, if you're joining us, please enter your name and agency in the chat, and then we can include you in the minutes, meeting minutes this month. So with that, if I can have approval of the March and April meeting minutes.
This is Nancy McNally. I move to approve.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor.
I'll second. It's Lisa Huff.
Thank you, Lisa. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay or same sign. Okay, not hearing any, then the motion passes. So the next item on our agenda is approval of the 2022 Q1 Treasurer's Report. So if we have Mayor Mills.
Hello, everyone.
Good
So
morning.
we have oh, there it is. It is on the screen. I was about to pull it up on another monitor of mine. So we have a carryover balance from the beginning of the year of $9,405.54. Membership dues of, I believe, all come in, which came over 27,000 for an operating expense of 36,760.
Did you freeze? Did I freeze or did you?
And there's
Okay.
just was there a question? Oh, that's just down from last year. That hopefully I think my internet might be a little unstable. I apologize. But, and then the Smart Commute membership dues for everyone were, or not for everyone, for NATA was 12,500, and so we have a net cash balance of 42.65 and 54 cents. Any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? Okay, looks like you're, so Carson, can you help me with procedure? Do we just need to accept the treasurer's report? Do we need to vote on that?
We do, Chair.
Okay. So I would, I can have a motion to accept the treasurer's report in a second.
This is Nancy McNally. I move to approve.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'll second to get this going.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. All in favor of accepting the treasurer's report, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries to accept the treasurer's report. So we're on to the Smart Commute updates. Carson.
Thanks, Chair. I'll keep it brief here this morning. Just a few updates from Smart Commute as we head into the summer season. Bike to Work Day is our big headline event, as all of you know. That's coming up at a regular time this year. As you remember, last year it was in September. This year it will be Wednesday, June 22nd. So we'll be having those traditional commute to work and from work, breakfast and afternoon stations. Smart Commute has been supporting all the jurisdictions in the NATA region with materials and help trying to get stations set up. And if you need anything, we're here to help. We'll be out that morning in a few different stations, including North Glen and Adams County, and maybe a couple more depending on staff ability. So we're looking forward to Bike to Work Day coming back in 2022 at a normal rate, and we hope there's a great turnout there. And again, reach out to us with any questions. We're happy to provide materials or details about that. Our Bike to Summer campaign, you may remember from last year, we did a big lead up campaign trying to get people to bike for that late September Bike to Work Day. We were afraid we were losing that period of time for great biking activity. So we launched Bike to Summer. This year, it's a little bit different with Bike to Work Day in the middle of the summer again. So we're going to be doing a June, July, and August the Bike to Summer campaign, where we essentially feature local bike rides and local bike friendly events and get out there in our communities and try to encourage biking in that way. We're also doing a series of rides along regional trails in our region and videoing those, virtual rides, and then sped up versions of those for little ride previews. We'll be launching those throughout the month of June and July and August as we kick off kind of this Bike to Summer idea. Part of the reason why we're doing those virtual bike rides is because it's an on-the-ground test for us for our bike gap analysis project, which is the next item here on the list. Smart Commute received some grant funding to go after a bike gap analysis project in the preparation phase, not the mapping phase quite yet, but that project is well underway, and we're thankful for all the NATA, our GIS staff and transportation staff for working with us to get that going. It essentially is going to look like all the regional trails. We're trying to identify that Swiss cheese, right? Where are the missing links? What's already there, so that we can eventually go to map printing a kind of a regional scale map for all the NATA region across the area. And we're out there ground testing that with rides on an almost daily basis, depending on the weather nowadays. Community events and RTD Final Fridays are the last two things I have to update you on. Community events are a big part of our summer. As you know, we'd love to be out there talking to the communities, all of your communities, about alternative commuting options and RTD and all those things. We'll be out there in Broomfield at a couple of events on June the 4th. So in just a week or so here, kicking off our community outreach for the summer. If you have any of those events, please send them our way, as I always say, and we're happy to be there depending on our staff availability. RTD Final Fridays, which is another part of our kind of outreach events throughout the summer. Last year, we held a series of thank you for writing RTD events and feedback gathering events at the end of the year. We decided to spread those out throughout the year this year and do Final Friday. So that'll be tomorrow morning. It's that fourth Friday of the month from 6:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. to capture those morning commuters at various large stations around the region. So tomorrow we'll be at 104th station at the end line, trying to just talk to folks about how their experience is going and thanking them for writing RTD at this time. With that, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions about Smart Commute's update.
Thank you, Carson. Any questions for Carson on the Smart Commute update?
I see a couple of hands. I don't know which one went up first.
Yes, go ahead, Director Vince Busick.
Thanks very much. And Carson, thanks for the update. And when you have these events in my district, feel free to give me a call. I'll be happy to join you in some of those. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I have Mayor Mills, I see next.
Oh, Yeah, the bike to work day is a great event here in Brighton. We typically have an event during that time, usually breakfast burritos at one of the local parks that people meet up. And I encourage everyone to set the example and bike whenever, whenever they can. I mean, I know it's not always convenient. Sometimes we have long places to go, but if you at least have a short drive on your work day, on your schedule that day, maybe consider biking. I've been trying to set the example in some people on my council have seen that I've biked to at least a couple of council meetings, a couple times to my insurance office, and even Commissioner Baca saw me at an event one Saturday biking. So I encourage everyone to bike whenever possible. It's great. It's healthy and gets you sunshine and fresh air. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else with questions? And Mayor Mills is correct. I did see him at the ribbon cutting for the Colorado Front Range Trail. So if you are an avid biker, you can now bike up to Brighton so Highway 7 is Veterans Park, and you can bike all the way south. We made the connection to the Adams County Regional Park. And as you know, that connects to all of downtown, and I think it goes to either Chatfield. So now everyone can make it up to Brighton. And that morning we had folks that came from way down south and downtown Denver riding their bikes and tandem bikes. So it was wonderful to see. And thank you, Carson, for your update.
Perfect.
So next on our agenda this morning is the NATA priority project list. And Carson, I'll turn this over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. I will lean a little bit on some of our senior staff here as we go through this, but
Great.
We have asked everyone to update the priority project list for NATA and get all your latest projects in there so that we're ready whenever we need to send a letter of support or support for any project across the region. So this is an important process, and we do it roughly 3 or 4 times a year here at NATA, and this is one of those. So I'm going to go through each one of the projects that are being proposed today to be added or removed from the list. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the other changes we've made. So first on the list is the top tier of projects. If you remember, we have 3 tiers, and the top of those tiers is priority projects. This is our priority projects for NATA, the top of the list. This is a proposed addition from the City of Thornton, 88th Avenue Multimodal Corridor Project, Pecos Street to US 85. It's a study project worth costing roughly $250,000 with an unknown implementation cost at this time. The corridor study funding was awarded through a Dr. Koch TIP application. We want to just go ahead and get that added to the list.
Okay.
I will move on to the second tier here. So we're going to do these all in one big batch. It's typically how we do it. So endorsed project, this is kind of that tier number 2 of projects that we have. And there's 3 of these on here. So first is to remove the North Metro Rail first and last mile connections in the City of Thornton. And if there are questions about that in a minute, I'll pass it over to Kent to talk about those. But it sounds like that project has been wrapped up. We need to remove that from the list. Next is US 85 safety study from I-76 to 124th Avenue. This is an Adams County project. It's a safety study costing roughly $100 million. They're applying for a TIP call number 2 and would like to get this added to the list. Riverdale Road and 128th Avenue intersection improvements and trail connections. This is another Adams County project they're looking to add to the list. It's worth costing roughly $1.5 million, and they're applying for TIP call number 2. Chair, I'll pause here. I see Chris Chauvin's hand up, and I don't want to get any details wrong, so I'll pass it to him.
Okay, fantastic. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Carson. I appreciate you pulling this information together. Just a clarification, the safety study that we're investigating is $100,000, not $100 million. $100 million would be great for Adams County. Cdot, are you listening? Dr. Cog, are you listening? But $100,000, please, for the safety study. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Darn it, we could have got 100 million.
Trying to help there. I guess
Yeah,
I mistyped. I'm
that.
so used to millions. I apologize. Simple typo. It is correct in the list. It's just incorrect on the slide. So no worries. There 100,000 for that safety study. The last tier here I'll talk about are 3 horizon projects that we want to add. So these are the ones way out on the horizon that we're looking at for NATA that we want to get in the queue so that if they become a project, we can move them up the list. So none of these have a cost associated with them at this time. They're all vision-oriented projects. First is I-25 and 128th Avenue interchange. It's the City of Thornton project. It's a new interchange and existing bridge. Consider a diverging diamond configuration. US 85 and 104th interchange, replace that at grade crossing with a new diamond interchange. 136th Avenue, Quebec Street to US 85, a new roadway. So extending that 136th Avenue across the South Platte River. And again, no cost for any of these. These are all the projects that we have to be added or removed. So this is part of what we'll be taking a motion on here in a minute. And I think I should pause here and maybe take questions about the project specific updates.
Okay, questions for Carson on the project specific updates? I'm not seeing any hands, but Carson, if you see any.
I think we're good.
Okay,
Just wanted to add one more piece that'll be kind of included in this update motion here today. This is just a simple screenshot you're seeing here, but the reason I wanted to show this is because senior staff from around the NATA region went into our spreadsheet and added their changes for 2022 in red. And a lot of those include simple scope updates and a large column for 2022 project updates here in red. This is just anecdotal information about where the project is in the process, where the funding might be. So these are not project specific updates. We're not looking to add or subtract anything, just some clarifications about where they are in the process. And we would just include those in kind of a group motion to get those added to the list.
okay. Anything else, Carson?
No, that's all.
All right, I appreciate that. So any questions regarding the priority project list? I will just add, for those that are newly elect or new staff, we went through this process. It's been a while. Maybe you can help me with the timeline, Carson. I want to say maybe 5 years ago. And if you notice, they're named as Horizon projects or endorsed projects. That's intentional. We didn't do a priority that you may see in your own jurisdiction numerically, where you have project, your top tier or your top project is project 1, 2, 3, 4. What we decided to do here at NATA is that we would look at projects that are levels of endorsement that we can, not levels of endorsement, but those transportation is fluid when it comes to funding, when it comes to endorsing, when it comes to maybe there are a number of partners that can come together. So I think that this has worked very well for us, and happy to take any questions. It's important you put your projects on this list because any projects that are on the list, we don't need to go back to the board to vote on to endorse a project. So, and it also helps in planning. So as we talk as communities and neighbors, neighboring cities, you know what your neighbor is doing. So it's been a great list to have and a great project that Karen Stewart brought forward to the board several years ago. So with that, do we need to accept the project list, Carson?
We do, and I'll just note
Okay.
that once this is formalized, we will have it on the NATA website and we'll be sure we get it out to everybody. And there'll be another opportunity to update this kind of later into Q2, Q3 of this year.
Okay, sounds really good. So with that, I will accept a motion to approve the priority projects list update.
This is Nancy McNally. I move to approve.
Greg Mills,
Thank you,
second.
Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Okay, not hearing any. I will move on. Thank you for your update, Carson. I appreciate it. So the next item we have is the Cdot Commissioner Report. So Karen Stewart.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
Morning.
Happy to give you a brief report. So this meeting of NATA always comes right after the Transportation Commission meeting, which is great for me because everything's still fresh in my mind. Last week, I had the opportunity to tour Burnham Yard. If you remember Burnham Yard, this is a 60+ acre area that was an old rail yard that is adjacent to like 13th and Alameda and that vicinity. And Region 1 funds of $50 million went to buy this property. I think there was some money from the state economic development people, but the purpose of buying this was in order to be able to move some of those tracks over to accommodate Front Range Rail eventually. And there's been a huge history of this Burnham Yard with homelessness on there, some vandalism. There's been some fires over there. But it's interesting because Cdot got it cleaned up, fenced off, and we had the tour. And the reason the tour is interesting, I think, is because as we move forward to putting in Front Range Rail, if that happens, or maybe eventually expanding I-25, probably not in my lifetime, but when it becomes necessary, this piece of property is really integral to that. The property dates back to the late 1800s, and there are some significant historical buildings on that property, double-story, three-story brick buildings that under redevelopment could become an outdoor market. If you've been to the Santa Fe Rail Yard, I think the idea is to do a development project similar to Santa Fe Rail Yard, where there's an ability for a community area. Cdot's probably going to need about 15 to 20 acres for what they need, but the rest will, after the NEPA is done to see what the impacts are, the environmental impacts are to that area, Cdot will be putting the rest of that acreage into an opportunity for development in conjunction with the city of Denver. So that's kind of interesting. I was surprised by that property because the views from there are extraordinary to the west. And so if you read anything about Burnham Yard, I'll say I've kind of changed my mind on, was not very happy about paying $50 million for that. But I think in the long run, it's a good investment and it'll be able to accommodate some multimodal opportunities we wouldn't have along I-25. So was happy to have that, that tour last week. At the Cdot Commission, we did a couple of things that I think have some importance. And one is the greenhouse gas policy directive and mitigation plan. If you remember, in April, Transportation Commission approved the greenhouse gas ruling, which means that any new transportation projects have to meet a greenhouse gas goal reduction. And your projects in NATA's area will be going through DRCOG. So DRCOG will need to meet a threshold of greenhouse gas reduction. And the policy directive is pretty important because it spells out a number of things for that. It spells out what's expected, what the goals are, gives value to the goals, and gives mitigation opportunities, calls out specific mitigation opportunities. This small group of people working on this worked very closely with community outreach people, all the MPOs and TPRs, many of the environmentalists, to come up with this mitigation report. And you can find this if you go to Cdot's website, and then under the query bar, just put GHG and it'll bring you to that report. It's, I think, impactful because a couple of things happened with this. One of the things that's important is we heard from the MPOs, particularly DRCOG and North Front Range, that there should be some value in anything that local communities do that offset greenhouse gas in that area, in that catchment area. And there was quite a lot of discussion about this, but the ad hoc greenhouse gas committee, of which I'm one of 3 members, put that into the rules so that if local jurisdictions have mitigation that can offset greenhouse gas within that area, that should be allowed. For example, mitigation could be new bike lanes, or could be opportunities to put in more transit, like the Smart Commute shuttle, those kinds of things. So we thought that was really important. And the other thing we thought was important was that any changes to the mitigation can't just be made by somebody at Cdot or someone at CDPHE or someone outside of the Transportation Commission, that any changes to mitigation would be vetted and then added to the policy directive that has the mitigation in there once the Transportation Commission looks at it. The reason we think this is important is while we didn't write the legislation requesting this, it was imposed on the Transportation Commission to put these rules into place and the direct policy directive into place. And so we feel like the responsibility is ours. So I thought both of those were terribly important. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was the Adams County 4P meetings that we had a few weeks ago. And I really do want to thank the Adams County jurisdictions who came in front of us and talked about the importance of their projects. Also, Commissioner Baca and Commissioner Odoricio and Mayor Pro Tem Jessica Sandgren were very articulate in making sure that Cdot understands the importance of many of the projects within Adams County, but in particular 270 and the crash corridor of 84th to 104th. And I really thank them for the opportunity to have that 4P meeting. I think it was a good meeting for all of us. And we were able to bring to the top several of the things that have been percolating within Adams County. So that was a very good meeting. And then the last thing I want to talk about is something that's probably percolating at ADCO Forum is these grant applications that are coming out. And I wanted to talk about the mega grant and just tell you that the mega grants really are the grants that have the most money available. It's a discretionary grant program that has nationally significant multimodal freight highway projects, which is the INFRA, the National Infrastructure Project Assistant Program, which is the MEGA, and the Rural Surface Transportation Program, which is the rural. And these all came out of the IIJA. It's interesting because in the state of Colorado, we have a number of mega projects that would probably fit the criteria of these mega grants. But this round of applications, I wanted to let you know that there have been a number of applications that are moving forward from CDOT's perspective. The biggest one is the I-70 Floyd Hill to Veterans Memorial Tunnels Improvement Project, which actually pulls in the mega, the infra, and the rural. And it's to complete the construction on the stretch of I-70 west of Denver to improve safety, travel time, trip reliability, and provide resiliency to the corridor. A couple of others that are on there is multimodal options for what's called the Westward 3, which is a Western Slope project, US Highway 50 safety highway improvements for freight and travel, connecting Craig to Kremlin, that's US 40 passing lanes, I-76 Phase 4 reconstruction and repavement project, which reconstructs about 1.5 miles of concrete pavement and the replacement of 4 bridges, and a number of other pieces to that. And then Morgan and Weld County are expecting to submit that particular application. And then US 160 Safety and Mobility Improvements Project. The reason I think this is important to talk about is recently there was a letter from the North I-25 Coalition asking CDOT and CDOT director to consider all of I-25 from 70 up through Fort Collins, Loveland and Fort Collins for a mega project to finish the managed lanes and all the safety issues along the I-25 corridor. And that was not considered in this round. But in talking to Shoshana and pushing this idea forward with the elected people, elected officials up in the North I-25 area, Shoshana said to me that these mega grants are expected to come every year for the next 5 years. And she doesn't feel that getting a mega grant this year would impact the opportunity for us to get future mega grants because of the lack of funding that we've had in Colorado from the feds. And so my parting words to you at this point is, let's continue to focus on what we can do with any of these grants. The raised grants are fairly small and probably wouldn't be appropriate for the I-25 corridor or the 270 corridor, but these grants would be. And so if we can continue to coalesce over the I-25 and 270, if we can continue to talk about the importance of both of these projects for safety, if we can continue to bring more people to the table, more stakeholders to the table, and I'm thinking about the truckers who use this, people who are north and south of us who don't live within our vicinity but use this stretch of highway. I think we should position ourselves in the next year or two to go after the next round of these grants. I'm happy to answer any questions. That's really my report for this month. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Stewart. Appreciate the report. Any questions for Commissioner Stewart? Henry.
Yes, awesome presentation. I just wanted to touch back on the Burnham shops, and just to you mentioned that Cdot's got some plans for the area. The rest of the property will go up. Just for the record, that RTD has also been interested in that area, and we have funds put aside for a 50-foot swath for corridor enhancements. So right where the remaining UP track is located, once they're relocated, the plan is for RTD to add a couple more tracks in there to add capacity in the downtown. So I just wanted to let everybody know that RTD is involved with it. They have been working with Cdot, and we do have funds put aside. Maybe one of the RTD board members may bring this up later, but it has been in our midterm financial plan for the last couple of years. And we're looking forward to that project as well, hopefully tying that whole development into the 13th and Osage state or 10th and Osage station.
Terrific. Thank you, Henry. Any other questions? I'm looking through, scrolling, and I don't see any. Commissioner Stewart, I just want to thank you for your update and for staying engaged and on top of transportation in our area, as well as other areas of Region 1. I know we had the 84th to 104th Avenue Crash Corridor Subcommittee. So, really interested, Commissioner, in working with you as our Region 1 director on how do we keep I-25 at the front of it, in the front of Cdot? How?
Yes.
And what are the next reasonable steps for Cdot to take on that corridor?
Yes. I think we're making some headway, although it's been very slow. But right now there is a new scoping in place, and talking to the Region 1 director, Jessica Mickelbust, she said to me that's probably not until December that new scoping would be. When that scoping comes out, it will give us a little more clarity on what the actual cost is and what the actual project should be in order to meet the requirements that we're looking at, we the locals and we Cdot, to reduce congestion, improve efficiency, but more than anything, address the safety issues that we see every day. And I think some of you might have seen Channel 7 with Mayor Pro Tem Jessica Sengren talking about the crash corridor. And I think anytime we can continue to talk about the issues on this corridor, that helps our mission. And until we get that scoping, I'm not sure what else we can do other than internally figure out some strategy to continue to be a squeaky wheel. And I know there's been some annoyance, I will say, at Cdot when we squeak or when anyone squeaks, because they want things to move in a process that works for them. I do believe that in the 25 or 30 years that I've been involved, squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so I'm always going to say that we have to continue to put it in front of anybody who's a decision maker, whether that's CDOT or whether it's the governor or whether it's, you know, our congressional representatives. And I think one of the big things that we have to tackle is the issue of a center loading platform for the 88 bus, the 120X, and if 122 comes back and if the Mustang is able to stop there. And that's a very complicated and expensive piece of what has to happen on I-25, in my opinion. And I think in many of your opinions. And so internally, until we get that scoping, I think a few more meetings of this ad hoc committee to talk about what can be the strategy to find funding, because quite frankly, I don't believe CDOT has the bandwidth to pay for center loading platform. And I don't think RTD does either. And I think we've got to find another way collaboratively to put that in, or at least plan for that sooner than later. I wish I had a better strategy, but I think we're sort of on hold at the CDOT side until the new scope comes out.
I appreciate that. So what is the timeline for the scoping? Has that been mentioned at all?
Yeah, Jessica, I don't think Jessica's on the call, but she said we should have something by December. So it's been given, the contract's been given, and the consultant's underway now.
All right, fantastic.
Oh, and they're working in conjunction with RTD. I know that RTD is at the table with this. So it's a collaborative effort between CDOT and I know RTD is a major stakeholder, so it will be part of that. Oh, there you are.
There's Jessica.
Jessica's
Thank you,
on
Jessica.
there. I'm going to ask you, Jessica, to jump in on this because you're the expert here.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah, Karen, actually, that was a very eloquent way to put this entire situation and the dialogue we've been having both between CDOT and the local agencies. So I really appreciate the eloquent way you were able to state all of those things. I don't mind you being the squeaky wheel at all. I think we've got a few good things that we've been trying to work toward. The scope of work has been executed. We have a consultant on board. I need to confirm if they have notice to proceed or not, but we have made it very clear that we want that work to move quickly and rapidly. So as soon as we get a notice to proceed, I anticipate having a kickoff meeting, and several of you on this call have asked to be included either in the efforts or, you know, kind of as a just to keep you informed. So we'll make sure that that happens. So I will get an update from Andy, and then I imagine that scoping meeting will happen soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessica, for being here and for your update. And again, thank you, Commissioner Stewart, for your update as well. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. Okay, not seeing any questions. We're going to move on to the RTD report. So who wants to start with RTD this morning? Director or Chair Vince Busick. I see your camera's on.
Thanks, Chair. And I guess I'll start and probably finish because I don't see any other directors on the call. I'm scrolling through the participants. So it might just be the Vince show today. So, and I'm a big fan of the squeaky wheel too. That squeaky wheel helped us get the end line finished in the middle of a pandemic. So I think squeaky wheels can often be a good thing. But that being said, let's move on to some other things happening at RTD. So today, CDOT Commissioner Stewart and I, along with others, I believe Michael Davies and maybe some others on the call, are going to be going down to Denver Union Station for the signing of Senate Bill 22-180. which is titled Programs to Reduce Ozone Through Increased Transit. What that really means for RTD is Zero Fare August. So we're preparing for the entire month of August to be zero fare. Well, I won't say fare free, because as our general manager points out, you know, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Everything costs something. So it's a zero fare month. Twofold goals, right? The first, as the bill indicates, to reduce ozone and to monitor any impacts that may occur by an increased use of transit. And also from RTD's perspective, to help encourage ridership, help encourage people to come back to transit that used to use it, and to attract new riders who've never used transit. So that's pretty exciting. We're working very hard on rolling out the messaging for this, working with the media, working with stakeholders along the corridor. General Manager Johnson and I had a meeting yesterday with a subcommittee of the Metro Mayor's Caucus, who are focused on assisting RTD in any way, from messaging to security issues and all that. So we're moving this forward, and be a big rollout, more than likely the July 1st timeframe. The SB 22180 is technically a grant program, and I believe we can only apply for the grant starting on July 1st. We'll get some money from the state. I know RTD is committed to $2 million of its own funds to make this happen as well. And that rollout will begin, I think, in earnest. You'll see a lot of messaging starting July 1st. So that's kind of exciting. I want to thank Michael Davies, who's on the call, Director Lynn Geisinger, who's on vacation actually, for their hard work, as well as our state lobbying firm, Brandon McKenna, for helping get this done. A couple other things. Last week, we had two listening sessions, Northeast and Northwest listening sessions. I know there are a number of people on the call here today who were also involved in those listening sessions, and it was our communication department giving some updates on things from safety and security to reimagine updates and things like that. And I thought the information was well received, and the comments back were well received as well. And I heard loud and clear that communities are looking forward to the reinstatement of the Flatiron Flyer services 122X and the 128. I am also excited to hopefully push for those to come back. Obviously, those things can only happen when we start bringing more people on board, more operators, more mechanics, and so forth. So there's another big push to make that happen as well. We're going to be having some discussion and decisions coming forward, I believe next month, regarding service planning councils, which I think is an important concept to this group. I know a lot of you have been involved in that discussion. It will create planning councils throughout the RTD region that will regularly and routinely give input to the RTD planning people with regard to needs in the community. And you know, it's a way for the community to be more regularly and directly involved in planning decisions. So excited to see that coming up. One thing near and dear to my heart that I've been pushing since January, when I became the chair, we're going to be having a study session on June 7th at 5:30. Please tune in to talk about zero emission vehicles, how we obtain and integrate those into our system. And, you know, there's a lot of challenges to RTD to make that happen, but I can guarantee you we want to be on the front line to ensure that this happens. So we've got, I believe, 17 electric buses on order that were coming to us through the Volkswagen settlement money. And those will be coming, well, supply chain issues will dictate when they arrive. It may be in a year, 18 months based on that. But I think we need to be prepared and know what to do when they get here, how we integrate them into the system, how we use them to study their effectiveness, you know, all the issues of range and effect on that range issue based on temperature and other conditions. So it's going to be a great pilot for us. So I'm really eager to get this moving forward and to keep zero emission vehicles top of mind. Let's see. One more thing, telephone town hall. So we're doing once a year, we do these telephone town halls. Each director has a town hall for their district. The District J telephone town hall, which is mine, will be June 9th at 5:30. So please tune in and see what we have to say. I don't believe there are any other directors on the call. If there are, I will defer to them for any more input. And if not, happy to take any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chair, for your update. Really appreciate it. Questions for the Chair of RTD? I'm not seeing any. There was a question in the chat and that was responded to by RTD, so I appreciate that. I will just add that please let us know what your marketing and outreach program look like for, what did you call it? Zero Fare August.
Right.
We are happy to also help promote that. I know that our services have diminished in this area, the Brighton and Greater Brighton area, and we certainly would like our numbers to look positive during this August Zero Fare month. So anything we can do to help RTD to make that lift, we're happy to help you.
Great. We'll be reaching out to you.
Okay, terrific. All right, next item on our agenda is the Front Range Passenger Rail. Carson, would you like to do the introduction?
That'd be great, Chair. We have David Singer and Spencer Dodge here with Cdot. So they're going to tag team this presentation and talk a little bit about the kind of the special district governance side of things, and then a nice project update about the Front Range Passenger Rail. I'm not sure who's going to kick it off, but I'll pass it over to one of you guys.
Morning, Carson. I'll kick it off and then I'll throw it to Spencer. Thank you all for having us. We're happy to come and give an update on this exciting study. My name is David Singer. I'm with Cdot's Division in Transit and Rail. I'm a program manager for Passenger Rail Branch. Spencer Dodge is the Rail District Liaison, and we have been working together as a team to advance this concept up and down the Front Range. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that we've kind of started with the vision. It's a very high level concept, something provide a choice for travelers along the Front Range. There aren't a lot of options, as we all know. And so this provides a way for us to move from Fort Collins to Pueblo. It serves as the backbone, knowing that if a successful concept is in place, it can move to the north into Wyoming, to the south to New Mexico, west to the mountains, and strengthen connections within the area. You see here the lines on the map represent existing transportation corridors. That means freight corridors, that means interstate corridors. Those are the places that we've been focusing on. And I used to have two logos here at the bottom. One of them is for the Rail Commission, which stood down last month, and Spencer will talk about that partnership still exists even though the logos don't. The commission and now the district is providing the policy and oversight, and he'll talk about all the achievements on governance that have occurred recently. And Cdot has provided the corridor development expertise, engineering, planning, modeling, GIS, all the things that we've done to advance transportation corridors throughout the state. So that partnership continues. It's been constructive and productive, and Cdot has made the commitment to continue to provide those resources through this next phase. Next slide. So when starting a new system from scratch, there's a lot of different components. And so this slide tries to compartmentalize and sort those. Policy and governance is critical. And so Spencer will talk about the success of the rail district, its function, 238, what its intent is and what it directs and empowers the district to do. On the program level, this group realizes the importance of having consistent plans at the local level, at the regional level, even in the statewide plans. We have a statewide rail plan and federal plans as well. And so that is critical for us at all levels to have a common message. And then third is the project itself. What color are the trains? Where are the platforms? What are the markets? Where does it go? And so that's the corridor development, the specifics that are also critical to a successful project. Next slide, please. Okay, Spencer, I think this is you. Go for it.
Thank you, David. So as David mentioned, Senate Bill 238 that was passed last year at the Capitol does create the Front Range Passenger Rail District. And this is kind of an evolution of the Southwest Chief and Front Range Passenger Rail Commission. The commission really kind of got things kicked off and started momentum, but we kind of looked at that structure and thought, hey, we need a little bit more maybe formality around this. And so we worked with elected officials and kind of created this new special district. Gives the powers of financing, designing, constructing, operating, and maintaining a passenger rail. It's represented by 17 voting members. The MPOs and the COGs up and down the corridor from border to border are represented. Dr. Cog, Pikes Peak, North Front Range, Pueblo area, South Central. The governor gets 6 appointees. Cdot has an appointee. And we also, one of the really strong benefits we found with the Rail Commission was having those Class 1 railroads, BNSF, Union Pacific, Amtrak, on the commission. And so we carried that over. We've got those folks again as non-voting members, along with RTD, Wyoming, New Mexico, and the I-70 Mountain Corridor Coalition. As far as the NATA region goes, your board of directors, voting members are Julie Duran-Mullica, Mayor Peck from Longmont, Deborah Johnson from RTD, Amber Blake from Cdot, and then from the Denver area, we've got Chris Nevitt and Josh Lapley, just some of the folks who are a little more close to your region, who you may be interested in reaching out to. So one of the powers that Senate Bill 238 does give to the rail district is the ability to ask voters who reside within the district to approve a sales tax for funding. But before we can get there, there's a couple of prerequisites. Those three being an operating plan, a financial plan, and those are kind of wrapped up within a larger service development plan, which is also an FRA requirement. And so that's kind of the next step as far as technical work goes. And I know David is, I think after this slide, going to dive into what that work looks like a little bit more in depth. So again, this new district, they have just started to meet. April is their first meeting. Tomorrow will be their second meeting. Really working on getting them off the ground and kind of building out that organizational infrastructure so that they can continue the work of the Rail Commission, continue being a solid partner with Cdot to make sure that this becomes a reality. Next slide.
Thanks, Spencer. I want to spend the next half dozen slides or so talking about the project development and corridor development. We start with purpose and needs. What are we really trying to accomplish? This helps us focus the development of alternatives and helps us set aside ones that really don't meet the goals of the project. We are looking to provide a choice, like we mentioned before. We're looking also to do something that can be done incrementally. We have lots of great studies on the shelves of Cdot that are big and bold, but we really didn't have a first step to take. So we're looking to do something that can be built out over generations. We need to follow the legislative mandate. We need to be mindful of growth in the corridor, do this in a sustainable way. We need to be mindful of where population centers and job centers are. That's where the market analysis will help us make decisions. And we need to do this in a context sensitive way. Next slide, please. So what are the tests to help us understand whether we're meeting the needs as we develop alternatives? Will individuals travel on this? Can we provide a competitive travel time? How does the system perform? What is the operational characteristics and feasibility? We know that the Front Range is a very constrained area and it's getting more constrained every day. What's the acceptable amount of impacts? And how do we build this into the natural and social environment? Third, we want to be sensitive with taxpayer dollars, and we want to understand what it costs to build, let alone operate and maintain a system. But if we can demonstrate the feasibility of these first 3 tests, it gives the rail district confidence to advance that ballot question, as Spencer mentioned earlier. So these are very high level criteria and lots of sub-performance measures that we look at with each one, and we'll unpack those as a part of the service development plan. Next slide, please. So how do we show our work in answering those questions? We've received an FRA discretionary grant to do this work. They will be providing oversight, and similar to Commissioner Stewart's discussion earlier, there's a 5-year discretionary program under the IIJA that for advancement of passenger rail at the national level. So FRA has guidance and expectations on how this works in a uniform way. And so we'll be following their guidance. Alternatives analysis will first look at the route. Where are the markets that we're hitting? Which of those lines on the map makes the most sense? From there, we develop the the operations. How many trains? What's the schedule? What's the technology? Which market will they be hitting? And from there, we'll start understanding what the infrastructure needs are for each of those. Where are platforms and stations needed? Where are additional tracks or bridges or tunnels? And then they can be broken down into distinct projects. All of these, like Spencer said, flow into something called a service development plan. It has operations and engineering, modeling. A lot of those resources Cdot has in-house. A lot of that work has already been performed, and we can rely on recent studies or update older studies that have happened along the Front Range. But a lot of that expertise we don't have. And so we're bringing on a consultant. We hope to have a notice to proceed next month. And so you'll start seeing new faces and better graphics and presentations, but also getting solicit input at stakeholder level on really what is appropriate and what's possible and what's desired from stakeholders. It's for those of you who have worked on planning and environmental linkages, we're at that appropriate level of project delivery. It's before NEPA, but we've learned at Cdot there's a lot you can do to move quickly through NEPA, and FRA is very interested in using those principles. Next slide, please. So we've seen this slide before. I think there's the hope of Amtrak and there's the hope of federal funding. What Amtrak, what FRA, and what the railroads who own the land have seen is they're willing to come. They think Colorado's ready for a new mode, long overdue, in fact, but you need to show a proof of concept first. It's not 55 trains to start. It's not 24 trains to start. It's something more modest, 3, 4, 5, 6 trains a day to build a culture and then grow that out over generations. That's what they've seen successfully done across the country. And this is one scenario that Amtrak has put together using existing tracks. It's a much lower price point than laying down 180 miles of tracks where none exist. We will be doing an alternatives analysis. So this is one of several scenarios that we'll examine. But we are partnering with Amtrak, who is a district member. They have a lot of expertise and lessons learned on how to take these first steps. Next slide, please. So you see that backbone again, the red line that exists within the district boundaries that Spencer mentioned. And so those are the corridors that we'll be examining. We talked about partnerships earlier on this meeting. This is not the burden of any one entity. And so the boxes to the left show all these disparate efforts that advance and inform passenger rail within the region. Communities to the south have taken steps independently to do stationary planning on their own. Amtrak and BNSF have conducted in-kind efforts on their own to help us know better about existing conditions or ridership or revenue models. And similarly at the region level, there's work about transit and multimodal connections that only strengthen a starter system. All of those things inform and things that we can adopt and roll into our study. Next slide. One of those partnerships is RTD. This slide is from them. We are working very closely with the peak service study team because one of the alternatives, one of the routes that Front Range Rail is looking at is in the same space that the Northwest Rail study is. They have a very specific scenario, 3 trains in the morning, 3 trains in the afternoon that they'll be looking at. And they're sharpening the pencil to better understand that concept from engineering and cost. And this is one of the alternatives that our project will be looking at. But we have seen, talking with BNSF and other markets, is that the local service and the long distance service need to work together, identify what an interoperating plan might be, and bring that to the BNSF. And so that's what our charge is collectively, our 2 studies and stakeholders over the next couple of years and see what that win-win could be. So it's been a good faith effort between Cdot and RTD and the district staff to figure out all elements and how we can find that collective solution. Next slide. Timelines. So there's been a lot of work, as I mentioned in the past, with governance, with definition, market analysis. The blue box is where we are now. And we're looking at a starter service, again, with FRA oversight. We're going to follow their lead. And we're going to try to meet those prerequisites that Spencer mentioned exist in 238. And so this information at the end of the study will give them the opportunity to bring a ballot question. After that question, there's more work to be done. As many of you know, it's agreements with railroads, it's right-of-way, it's final design, it's NEPA. And so this is just a snapshot of where we are in the overall project delivery process. On the last slide, I think we'll open it up to questions and also make a plug for the website. I apologize for not having the link on here, but it's frontrangepassengerrail.com. And we've put together FAQs, those will evolve, references to past studies. Thank you, Spencer. And that will continue to be the clearinghouse for updates and notices. So with that, I'll catch my breath and I guess open it up for questions on the governance side, on the district side for Spencer, or on the project side. I'm happy to answer those questions too.
Thank you, David and Spencer. This is Greg Mills. I'll be taking over the meeting because Commissioner Baca had a hard stop and had to go to another important meeting with the county. Questions for Front Range Passenger Rail? Does anybody have any? I don't see any questions. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation and look forward to the next step in this process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So according to the agenda, is there anything else anybody has before the body of the NATA?
I will raise one point, Chair, just before, I guess, Treasurer, before we end here. The next NATA meeting is scheduled for late June, and when I sent out the agenda, there's a note in there for an in-person meeting. We're evaluating that because I've heard that it's during the CML conference, which typically falls during that June meeting. So we'll talk about that as an executive SPC and get back with the rest of the group on where the next NATA meeting will take place and what that might look like.
It's a very good point, Carson. Yeah, that week while we're trying to get back in person is the CML conference out in Breckenridge, and a lot of us may be involved in that. I will also be there too. As much as I want to get back in person, that is a conference I will be at. So, anything else from anyone? If you look at your email that Carson sent a few days ago, there are a lot of great future topics that we'll be hopefully discussing in the near future. And so we look forward to that. And if there's nothing else before this body of people, we are now adjourned at 8:32. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Have a safe holiday weekend.